The daughter of my husband's one true love was taken from them, and before I could even understand what was happening, everything I loved began to unravel. Alara, that woman of fragile beauty and fierce devotion, knelt before me, her cries echoing like the sound of shattering glass. Lily is just a child, she pleaded, her voice trembling. If you need someone to blame, let it be me. I was 8 months pregnant and utterly bewildered, but my husband, Adrian Vance, looked at me as if I were a stranger. The tenderness I had once trusted was gone, replaced by a fury so cold it stole the air from my lungs. Have I been too lenient with you? He demanded, his voice low, the weight of betrayal in every word. How could you do something so vile? It was then I realized what they believed, that I had ordered the kidnapping of Alara's daughter. The ransom had failed, the child had been lost, and grief had poisoned the hearts of everyone around me. When Alara's despair drove her near the edge, Adrian's love for her twisted into something unrecognizable. He summoned a team of scientists and made the impossible real. They created a living child from Lily's preserved cells. But Alara's body, broken from past suffering, could no longer bear life. And so, his gaze turned to me. I begged him to listen, to see reason, to remember who I was, but my pleas met only with silence and disbelief. He said I owed Lily this, that the balance of fate demanded it. I didn't understand what kind of justice it was that asked one mother to replace another's loss. The days that followed blurred into a waking nightmare. Adrian, once gentle, became an unmovable force of punishment and purpose. My protests meant nothing, my tears only deepened his resolve. When I awoke after a haze of pain and confusion, my body was no longer my own. The life I had carried, the son I had imagined cradling, was gone. And within me now grew the child of another woman, one I was told to protect as penance. Grief hollowed me out until there was nothing left but the fragile rhythm of breath. I tried to end it, to escape the suffocating prison of my own body, but even that mercy was denied. Adrian would not allow me to disappear. He claimed my survival as an act of duty, a living sentence. You must atone, he said, watching over me not as a husband but as a warden. When the child is born, your debt will be repaid. I became a vessel, silent, obedient, erased. He would sit beside me, speaking as if we were still partners in some distant, forgotten life. He would say he still believed I could change, that this burden might cleanse my heart. I learned to respond with stillness, to let his words pass through me like wind through an empty house. When I could no longer speak clearly, I discovered a terrible peace in silence. Months stretched like years. Adrian left to care for Alara abroad, and in his absence the world grew unbearably quiet. My body weakened, my thoughts dulled, and I ceased to recognize myself. I existed only to keep the fragile heartbeat within me alive. Each movement, each breath, each faint flicker of life reminded me that I was no longer a person but a means to an end. I began to imagine the walls whispering, the shadows bending closer to listen. Sometimes I thought I heard the soft laugh of the child who would never grow up, sometimes the faint echo of Adrian's voice saying my name as if it still mattered. But the truth was simpler, I had become invisible. By the time they returned, I was little more than a ghost still bound to flesh. Adrian's first words were about the baby. You're so thin, he said, concern lining his brow, not for me, but for the life inside me. When the doctors assured him the child was healthy, he seemed almost relieved. Once she's born, you'll rest. You'll recover. Everything will be as it was. But nothing could ever be as it was. Alara approached me with eyes that glowed with a strange tenderness. Lily, my darling, she whispered to the swell of my abdomen, Mommy's here. She looked at me then, her expression unreadable. You've done well, Talia. You've kept her safe. Adrian left us alone, trusting that I was too weak to do harm.